Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Trying to make things better for people has been a hallmark of my life, along with lending my voice to those who either do not have a voice or whose voices have gone unheard and unheeded. Truth be told, I'm only happy and fulfilled when I'm working in some way to help people build a better world. I grew up in the United Methodist Church. My maternal grandfather was a prominent Methodist minister in the Virginia Conference. Attending church was never optional. My mother insisted that I go to Sunday school and church unless I was seriously ill, injured, or perhaps dead, and maybe not then. One could say that I began my spiritual journey in earnest at the tender age of 9, when I insisted that I was ready for confirmation class, even though the usual confirmation age was 12. At that time, I also demonstrated a certain knack for advocacy as I made a convincing argument for early confirmation to my grandfather and my local pastor. As a child and youth, I participated in local, regional, and state leadership conferences and mission work with the Methodist Church. It was during this time that I first heard a call to ministry. Shortly after one youth Sunday service, in which I had been the youth preacher, an elderly member of the congregation came up to me and said that if I didn't become a preacher like my grandfather, I would have missed my calling. At 17 years old, I wasn't interested in becoming a minister. I had grown up in a small town. I was interested in exploring the world. And I didn't much like being told by someone I barely knew what I should do with my life. Nope, I had a different idea in mind. I wanted to be an English teacher. Not just any English teacher, mind you. I wanted to be the best English teacher there ever was, which is exactly what I told a local bank president who wrote a recommendation for my admission to the College of William and Mary in Virginia. That's the official name, don't you know? The College of William and Mary in Virginia. I'm not aware of any other colleges, but that's it. Anyway, that was my goal when I applied to college, to become the best English teacher there ever was. But while at William and Mary, I got involved in student and college politics, and I found that my tendency to speak up and advocate for others, a tendency that sometimes got me in trouble in high school, was an asset in representing William and Mary's student interests at the Virginia General Assembly, which I did for 2 years. Then a group of students asked me to run for president of the student government, and I did, and I won. And I had a great time improving student life. Everyone thought I would become governor of Virginia one day. Ha, fooled them. Which leads to how I decided at the very last minute to apply to the University of Virginia Law School. I hoped that I'd be able to help people build a better world. In those years, however, UVA's law school was intent on turning out well-trained legal minds committed to supporting corporate welfare in a capitalist system, which just didn't resonate with me. So, with a bachelor's degree in English from William and Mary and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Virginia, I made my way to government service and began my legal career in earnest in the Antitrust Division of the U.S. Department of Justice, hoping to use my legal training to protect the public from corporate greed. Like many young adults, I had not attended church or participated in any other religious activities while in college. But while at law school, I made friends with a group of Jewish students and began discussing Judaism with them. I've always been interested in ethics, by which I mean moral principles that govern a person's behavior. And I found Judaism's emphasis on how to live an ethical life both intellectually stimulating and spiritually comforting. I began my Jewish studies while at UVA and eventually converted to Judaism, not due to a relationship, but for my own sake. My Jewish friends were all young professionals living in Washington, D.C. They were women and men employed as attorneys, doctors, government contractors, entrepreneurs, and young professors. One of my close friends at the time, a beautiful woman named Hetty, had such a top secret job within the federal government that she couldn't tell us anything about it. We were all dying of curiosity, but she wouldn't say a word. It was while studying Judaism and living in DC that I discovered that the Jewish understanding of what we call justice is really two different concepts in Hebrew. The first concept is the Hebrew word mishpat, which refers to what we understand as legal justice in the sense of respecting people's rights. It's a more formal and rules-oriented justice that speaks of the punishment being equal to the crime and of restitution being equal to the harm done. It's the basis of Western legal systems. I pursued my legal career in service to this type of justice. Eventually, though, I came to realize that our formal justice system wasn't always supportive of human well-being, that the formal rules were often skewed to favor the wealthy and powerful. A one-rule-fits-all system often leaves out those who do not have the financial means, the background, or the opportunities of those for whom the rules were made. The underlying assumptions of the U.S. legal system are sometimes wrong. There is such a thing as an unfair or unjust law. Which brings me to the second concept of justice embodied in the Hebrew word tzedakah. The title of today's message, Justice, Justice Shall You Pursue, comes from the Hebrew scriptures, Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 18 through 20. This is a part of the biblical story about how the Israelites left Egypt in pursuit of freedom from Egyptian slavery and toward a land of their own. At this point in the biblical narrative, the Israelites, led by Moses, have left Egypt and have been wandering around the desert for 40 years. So, as you can imagine, by this time, they are more than ready to settle down somewhere. But before they can, they have to agree on a social contract, a covenant, if you will. So Moses teaches the Israelites about how to establish a court system. Moses tells them, "You shall appoint judges and officials throughout your tribes and all your towns. They shall render just decisions for the people. You must not distort justice, you must not show partiality, and you must not accept bribes, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of those who are in the right. Justice, justice shall you pursue." Now, you might think that what has been translated here as justice is the word mishpat, that formal type of justice that we've just heard Moses tell the Israelites to create, but it isn't. The Hebrew word in that phrase, justice, justice shall you pursue, is tzedakah, which refers to day-to-day living in which a person conducts all relationships in family and society with fairness, generosity, and equity. This concept of justice is roughly equivalent to our first and second principles. Our commitment to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person and to act with justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. From this, we learned that the purpose of mishpat, a formal system of laws and dispute resolution, is to serve tzedakah, fairness, generosity, and equity in day-to-day living. Among my Jewish friends, I found an understanding that anything I do, including the mundane tasks of daily living, with the intention of connecting to the divine, could be elevated to the realm of the spirit and could be an expression of God's love in the world. I also learned that prayer is not just what I do before I go to bed or eat a meal. It's the way I live my life on a daily basis. I learned that it's much more important what I do than what I believe. The question is, what am I doing to engage in tikkun olam, repairing the world? And what am I doing to help to bring more justice, more tzedakah into the world? Eventually, I left the city and the Jewish community to live in the rural country village that I'm in now. I left so that I would be able to raise my daughter in the arms of my extended family. And having become a person deeply interested in spirituality and in tzedakah, I was drawn to a small and growing Unitarian Universalist fellowship, the UU Fellowship of the Rappahannock, where I found people with a plan of action taking practical steps to bring justice into the world. People who were bound in community not by a common creed, but by a common set of principles and a common desire to embody what I understand as tzedakah. It was while practicing family law in my own little law firm here in Whitestone, Virginia, that I began to realize that any fair system of rules or laws needs a certain amount of mercy, a certain recognition that all people are not always similarly situated, and that sometimes people simply make mistakes. I began to feel that there was just too much mishpat and not enough tzedakah. I also began to discern a deeper problem, a deeper pain that the justice system just could not address. I found that many of my clients were socially isolated, far from their families of origin, and without a values-based community to support them. It was at this time that I heard the call to ministry again, as members of my fellowship suggested that I might want to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. This time, I heeded the call and began the path to UU ministry. There's so much hardship in the world right now, it's overwhelming. Like the mature man on the beach, I sometimes wonder whether my efforts are futile. And then I remember the little girl in our story, and I'm reminded that I do not have to do this work alone. I belong to a religious community dedicated to taking care of each other and to making a positive difference in the world. So I have a mind to change the story, the starfish story, and give it an extra extended ending, if you will. An ending that reflects the commitment and community I have found within Unitarian Universalism, and which I see reflected in this congregation. This ending also reflects the power of people working together in the type of justice embodied in the Hebrew word tzedakah. I end the story like this. And after their conversation, the man recognized the truth in what the little girl had said. She was making a difference for each of the starfish that she returned to the water. He began to help her by throwing in as many starfish as he could. After a little while, the man once again considered what a big job it was that he and the little girl had undertaken. He realized that they could save many more starfish if they had more hands to help. So he told the little girl that he would stay on the beach, continuing the work that she had started, while she ran to tell her parents and siblings and friends and neighbors about the plight of the starfish and ask them for help. Before long, the man was joined by dozens and dozens of people. Hundreds, if not thousands, of starfish were saved that day. Right then and there, they made the commitment to come together after each big storm to return as many stranded starfish to the sea as they could. As vocalist Hope Clayton, accompanied by Jeannie Hebner, leads us in singing verses 4 through 5 of hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, please consider how within this religious community there's a connectedness that, once felt, inspires us to act for justice.